On today's show, we review Simvibe by SimXperience. Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Sean Cole with my good buddy,
Darren Ganji.
And today we're here to try something very different out, and that is the Simvibe software by SimXperience. And it's software, and you gotta wonder, what does software do? Well, it is a multi-dimensional transducer firing system, controlling system. It's software.
Controller.
Yeah, controller. It's software that basically controls your butt kickers or any tactile feedback device.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not familiar with a butt kicker, we've reviewed them on the show a few times actually, in a few different forms. And basically what it does is it takes the low-end rumble. It's basically like a silent subwoofer. And if you're not familiar with a subwoofer, Google it. And got one sitting right here. Basically what it does though is it takes the low-end sound and shakes. It makes the butt kicker rumble.
Right.
So what it does within a racing sim is you go over rumble strips, motors rumbling, and so is the butt kicker. So basically, it's controlled by sound.
Right. Now, Simvibe switches that. All the principles of the transducer stay the same. It's still a shaking device, but now it switches it from being audio controlled to software controlled, much like what controls the force feedback in our wheel or a full motion system. But it now takes those, and it still works on the same thing. It's still looking for the moments that shake your car, the engine rubble, the going off-road or over rumble strips. But it converts it...
Gear shift.
Exactly. And it puts it into controlled pulses to the butt kickers or
Right.
any tactile feedback device.
Yeah, so basically what it's doing is it's taking data from within the game, not the sound, the data, converting it to sound. The software is now converting it to sound, putting it through a sound card, and then pumping that to an amplifier, which
Right.
then puts it into the butt kickers.
Right. So to do this, you need the software, obviously, Simvibe by SimXperience, and that's $79.95. You're also going to need a sound card that is dedicated to sending a signal to these amps.
And let's stop right there. Yes, you have a sound card already. If you have a PC already built in,
Right.
you need another one.
Right.
So the stock sound card will work
Yeah.
in conjunction with the second one that will
Right.
either handle your sound or the Simvibe.
Exactly. And then beyond that, you're going to need transducers, and it'll work with anything from 1 to 8 different transducers. Each transducer is going to need its own amp or a power source. A channel of a multi-channel amp would work as well.
Yeah, and there's more than just butt kickers. Now, that's
Sure.
what we're running here on Sean's rig.
Right.
I actually have, I'm not even sure what the puck is. I have some puck that's a shaker. There's Aura shakers.
Right.
So there's a bunch of different transducers that you can use as long as it's powered by an amp.
Right.
So that's what you basically need.
Now there's 2 different modes that you can operate Simvibe software with, and that's chassis mode, which is the way I'm running it. And that I'm using 4 butt kickers, as you mentioned. I have one at each corner of my rig, and it actually represents left front, left rear, right rear. And I have the way it's working, it's sending a message to all of my butt kickers, but it's kind of using the location as the method of delivering it, or thinking left, right, front, rear.
Location on the chassis.
Exactly.
And you can do up to 8, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I could even add to that well, that kind of goes to the way you have yours set up.
Yeah, and I'm running in what's called extensions mode. And I have 2 butt kickers, so I have one that's mounted under my seat, so it's literally kicking my butt. And then it's actually not even a butt kicker, it's that puck I was talking about. And then I have one mounted on the top of my platform near my pedals.
Right.
So I have front and rear separation, and it's in this extensions mode, which obviously is not going to give you that stereo.
Right.
But it's giving you, basically extension mode gives you pedals, seat, shifter. So I'm running basically my front one is pedals and my rear one is seat.
Right. And I could actually add extensions mode to the chassis mode. So if you got into one of those 8 butt kickers things, I could actually put one on my gear shift if I wanted, for example.
Yep.
Now we're not going to take a lot of time on setup because we're actually going to do an entire video that gives you very detailed instructions on how to set it up both on the hardware and software side of things. But just in a nutshell, like I mentioned, I'm in chassis mode. I've got a left, front, right rear, left rear. And the way it works is I have a RCA mini plug, RCA to mini plug, and it's got the left and right channel. So I put one into the green on the sound card, the second sound card, and that represents my left, front, and rear. Those go into 2 different amps, going to the 2 different butt kickers, and then vice versa on the rear end into the black channel. So that's basically how I'm splitting off my 4 channels and getting that distribution.
And you could ultimately have a 4-channel amp that would handle all of it instead of having 4 separate amps per butt kicker. And then I'm running again as that extensions mode, and I'm running 2 amps. And originally I just started with 1. I had the software and I tested it with just the seat. And I hooked it up to the green port on the sound card. And I had that separation, so I had the right and left channel, and I just assumed that running 1 channel would be mono, and that it would just both, separation on the RCAs would be the same. Well, so I plugged it into my amp, and I got nothing. In tests it worked, and then the next day I'm talking to Sean, and I'm like, I wonder if I need to have both running, or do I need to combine them back into a mono channel. Well, the problem was I only had seat mode in extensions mode, and I was hooked into the channel that was running pedals. So I thought it wasn't working, and in reality it was, but it was sending signals to...
You had them like kind of crisscrossed.
So yeah, all I did was switch the RCA jacks, and everything was fine. So you just got to make sure you're on the right channel. That's my tip for this, and we're going to go more in depth, like Sean said, in our setup.
So basically, once all the hardware is set up, you do have software. It's got a launcher that's going to be able to bring up the launcher, and it will know, it auto detects what games you have, and you can actually set up a bunch of different settings for different games. So R-Factor, you might have different settings than you do in iRacing. Or if you get to the point where we are now, I'm getting to the point where I have a different setting for every car in iRacing. Because some cars are just more active than other cars.
More thump.
Yeah, and then once you're doing these profiles for each car, what we're talking about, being able to set, like, how loud is the gear shift signal? How much noise is the engine vibration? And there are so many different settings that you can actually adjust its high and low end and its overall volume. So I actually spent a lot of time finding myself turning everything off just to feel the engine and isolate that feeling.
Yep, I did the same exact thing. I turned off all my sound, as a matter of fact, and fired one thing at a time to see how that felt. Because when you have everything going, you're not sure. I have a big fat woofer behind me too, and I wasn't sure if the woofer was kicking or the front, So anyway, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, but once you get it all dialed in, for me running in that chassis mode, it's like if you bumped me on the left rear, I'd feel a bump on the left rear.
Well, and even in my extensions mode, last night we were driving the Mustang. I was in the Mustang practicing for the Daytona Roar Before race, and I'm coming down pit lane, and I was just rushing out of the pits, and we was at a practice session, caught the grass a little bit, car came around on me, and I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna hit the wall? I honestly probably wouldn't have been able to tell if it hit the wall, except for, goosh, I felt it under my seat, and it was just a scrape. So yeah, if you feel people bumping you, you get all that. It's like almost like a poor man's motion sim.
It definitely is. That's perfectly stated.
So that's set up in a nutshell, and so basically it's giving tactile feedback, not sound feedback, through these, that's what the Simvibe experience is. It's basically setting it up to, and we've wished for this. We talked to Butt Kicker when they first came out and said, hey, is there a way you guys could take the information from the game and put it to the butt kickers versus, because here's one of my biggest complaints about butt kickers. You leave the game, and whether you're playing music or there's music in the game or in the UI or you're watching a replay, those butt kickers are still firing. Not the case with Simvibe. You drive, and that's the only time they fire. Replays, they don't fire. So anyway, that's going to wrap up the first half of our review of Simvibe. And when we come back, we're going to go over some pros and cons, rev it up on the rev scale, and give you some final thoughts right after this.
Welcome back to our review of the Simvibe software by SimXperience. And, you know, first thing we should say is this is only going to work on the PC. We mentioned the second sound card, so that was kind of, I'm not going to say obvious, but this isn't going to work on any of the consoles. A stock butt kicker will, if you tap into the audio.
Work well, too.
But not in this configuration.
Yep.
So another thing is, you've learned that regardless, 1 transducer or 8, the overall effect is there. I mean, you can do more with more, but I mean, even if you had 1 butt kicker, all of what we've talked about is going to work essentially.
I've read comments on iRacing and different places with guys that just have 1 and they say it's a must-have, and we're already getting into our final thoughts really, but it is. I mean, if you have a butt kicker already, well, you're going to need to buy a sound card and the software, but I'd say it's worth the investment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a total concept change.
All right, before we get to that, let's get into the pros and cons.
Good call.
All right, so starting with the pros, and you feel bumps and things, especially in iRacing. Honestly, I haven't tried it beyond that, and I'm gonna, that you've never felt before.
Yeah,
things
absolutely.
that just you didn't realize were there, except for visually. You know, you hear the tone of the motor change or whatever, but now you can feel it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Sebring is so bumpy, and we all know that, but I had no idea how bumpy until running it with the Simvibe software.
Yep.
The next pro is this actually enhances isn't even the word. This works with your force feedback. The timing is the same. Yeah, it's like, it's the same output from the game at the same time, and you start to kind of lose feeling of whether it was the Simvibe and the butt kickers or was it the wheel doing it.
I had that last night. I was driving that Mustang and I was like, is that vibration coming from the wheel or from my kickers?
Yeah.
So it's great to enhance it. It definitely ties it all together.
Yeah. And the next one, this kind of ties right into that, and you said it earlier, poor man's sim. This is a poor man's full motion sim. My brain thinks I have a full motion sim now. There's no debating it.
Hitting walls and stuff, it feels like there's motion happening. It's ever so slight, but honestly don't want to be thrown around too much, because if I am, I want everything to be thrown around like I'm in a car. So. Right. Next thing, total immersion. It puts the immersion through the roof.
Yeah.
So it just really makes you feel like you're more in a chassis.
Yeah.
I guess I love that chassis mode name. I mean, that's a great name for it. And then the next pro, it turns the butt kicker into a completely different device.
Yeah.
You know,
completely.
Yeah, it's a sound transducer, but you wouldn't think based on how it's happening that sound is still making it happen, and it turns it into a completely different experience.
Yeah. Another pro is the entire software interface. So whether it's alt-tabbing out of the game and being able to change my profile, or being able to set up multiple profiles per sim or per car, which means the entire thing is completely tunable to my desire. So I mean, in one car, I can focus on certain things.
Yeah, and you can add effects, take effects away. You know, one of my favorite effects is the wind noise. Mm-hmm. That's only based on the speed of your car, but it gets louder gradually. It's not based on any actual data that's coming out except for the speed of the car, but it just helps you make you feel like you're going faster. Because when you're in a car and that thing starts shaking more and you hear more wind coming through you, and it makes a big difference. And the last pro is we mentioned this too, is that it turns off when you're not driving. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to be thumping music if you want to play music on your system, or if there's music in the UI that just starts, like R Factor just pumps music, and it doesn't do that. So that's a huge pro.
Definitely a huge pro. And that takes us to the cons, and actually there aren't a lot. There's only 2 different cons. The first one is it could be perceived as being expensive. Maybe not the software, $79.95, which is marginally expensive, but it's the additional things you're going to need. The butt kicker, the amps, or transducer, I don't want to always say butt kicker there, or even just the extra sound card.
Yep. Back to the software too, and I had made this suggestion, and it was one of my comments, was that this software not only does the Simvibe, what we're doing, it also does the full SimXperience, which drives motion.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to seen a separation there. Buy the
Right.
Simvibe for $49.95 and then an extra $30 for the SimXperience, or
Yeah.
vice versa. Buy the SimXperience for
Right.
$49.95 and $30 additional to do the
Right.
Simvibe. But it's $80.
I have to admit, during this review, I completely forgot what else the software can do, because it's actually called Sim Commander.
Right.
And like you said, it'll do a full motion sim. It also has a thing to do touch screen pads, and you can design your own layout. I mean, it's got a lot
Very
of extra
powerful.
cool stuff. And Bernie there is always expanding, and I've already seen some of the things that are coming to Sim Commander. So when we say $79.95, that's the entire software package.
Yep. And the last con can be a little technical. It's not for the brand new sim racer. If you're just got into sim racing and you've never opened up your PC, you didn't build your own PC, or don't have access to somebody that can help you install that stuff, this probably isn't for you.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe
hopefully
you'll
our
get to
setup
that.
video will help that, though.
Definitely. Our setup video is definitely going to help that, but this is not for the novice new user.
No.
And it goes beyond that. It's setting up the software and stuff Bernie's gonna upgrade his instructions. The extensions mode could have used a little more detail as far as that separation on the channels.
Right.
Other than that, I figured it out on my own.
Right.
I told you, get me in touch with Bernie. I need this
Yes,
running,
yes,
and then I
yes.
figured it out that morning. So, and Bernie's great for tech support. He will help you get your stuff set up. So, that's gonna wrap up the cons.
Yeah.
Rev scale.
Rev scale. For me, this is a no-brainer. This is a 10.
Yep, 10 for me too. It's a must. Now, you need the whole package. It could be really expensive. Actually, back to the expensive, like Sean said, it could be expensive. We're into the final thoughts now. It could be expensive, the whole package. Butt kickers. I mean, you can just start with one.
Right.
The butt kicker and the amp, sound card, software. So, you're looking at, what, $250
Yeah.
or so?
Yeah, that's fair.
To get you going just for one butt kicker. Now, if you're running,
Right.
Sean said it, which by the way, we'd like to thank Butt Kicker for setting us up, sent us a bunch of equipment to get this running full chassis mode.
I feel very lucky to have it that way.
So we'd like to thank them for hooking us up. But yeah, if you're running 4 butt kickers, what are those, about 100 apiece?
$150 for the gamer set, I believe.
So that's $600 in gamer sets right there.
And amps and shakers.
$80 for the software, so $680, $30 for the sound card, $30-40.
Yeah,
for the
30.
sound
Yeah,
card.
yeah.
So that's a $700 plus system.
Yeah, I got a lot invested into this.
Now mine, still in the final thoughts here. I like the extensions mode, the front. I think this is almost a little overkill. And so let's see, for 150, 300 plus, so 380, under $400. I'd say it's definitely worth it. And that is expensive, but it's just that,
the experience.
yeah, and you want to take your chassis and your sim rig to that next level, must have, man.
Yeah.
This is definitely one of those must have for these sim racing experiences. And we're gonna get the comments, man, you guys are killing me. You guys do all these must have, and then I must have it. My wife's gonna cut my throat and cut me off. But hey, it's another one of those must have. And Bernie, dude, you're the man.
Yeah.
And I love Simvibe, and I'm gonna be running. It's another one of those things. It's like you said it in the very first butt kicker review, and you turn it off, and it's like, who turned off my sim?
Exactly.
And now it's really like that. If they're
Yeah.
if it's not running, I just park it and get it running, because it just, once you get it set up, it runs.
Yeah. I got to tell you, you said almost everything that I would have said in terms of final thoughts. The only thing I'm going to really add to that is that you mentioned immersion in the pros and cons. This immersion isn't just immersion for fun. I'm going to actually say this has actually made me faster. Not one lap at a time faster, but consistency faster.
Yep.
It has allowed me to actually use it to cure one of my problems, which is on downshifts. I tend to downshift too quickly. Well, if my sim is hitting me, it's hard to not know I'm downshifting. So it's like, it's actually helped me find bumps on the tracks. And it's like, I could actually make the argument it's gonna make you faster, not just make your rig cooler.
Yeah, and keep you just more in tune with what's going on with the car. And there's just so many ways you can dial things in. And another thing is just take your time setting it up. You know, don't just go with the stock default settings, although they're really good.
Yeah.
And another thing, in extensions mode, it only starts with the seat mode, so you have to add the pedal mode to it. Maybe I don't know, maybe it didn't pick it up or something, but
yeah.
One thing we also didn't mention is you have to do some setup in Windows,
right,
on that sound card. So we're going to talk about that in the whole setup video that we do. But,
absolutely.
Actually, I think you're going to do that video.
We're going to both do it. We have equal parts. You're going to tell people about extensions mode. I'm going to talk about chassis mode. We're going to talk about setting up the entire software, hardware, plugging it all in.
When's that going to be out?
We're going to get it out within just a few days. It's going to be right on the tails of
the show. So
that
that means probably sometime in February we'll have that out.
No, we're going to do much better than that.
It's going to be following this review. So, and if you need any tips on getting this set up, come to our forums. We're going to have a thread for this review. Ask, you know, I go in there every day. Sean goes in there, checks things out. We'll be following that thread, and if you need any help getting your Simvibe set up and dialed in, hit us up. Be happy to help you out.
The other thing is at SimXperience, we have a banner on our website. You can go there, check it out. Bernie actually has a PDF with all the setup instructions, tells you everything you need to know in advance, so you could actually see what you'd be getting into.
Yep. Anything else?
No, I think that's about it. That's going to do it for today's show.
We could talk about this forever. This is one of our favorite new toys.
Absolutely.
Oh, we're going to have some links in our description, hopefully, to sound cards that you can purchase and transducers. Actually, I didn't think I could run this with dual cards, dual video cards, because I'm running two 580s right now. I didn't think I was going to have the slot. I thought I needed a PCI, an old style PCI slot.
Right.
I'm using the
Express.
The PCI Express slot.
Yeah.
And so I got a sound card for that. I didn't even know that I was capable of running with dual video cards in there. I thought I was out of space, but
yeah, worked out nice.
Yep, worked out great. Thank you, Bernie, for hooking us up with the software. And man, I really love it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he'll get us some Simvibe or SimXperience motion stuff to play with soon enough, huh?
Maybe that. We've been had a lot of requests for that, so I'm sure people would like to see it. So I think that's going to wrap it up.
Yeah, definitely.
Like us, follow us, and come visit us at our site, in our chat room, in our forums, isrtv.com. For Sean Cole, I'm Darren Ganji. We'll see you guys next time.